Nearly 20,000 immigrant truck drivers are suing the California DMV over canceled commercial driver's licenses after a string of deadly crashes. So do they have a case? Let's ask Fox News contributor and former Whitewater Deputy Independent Counsel Sol Weisenberg. Sol, so great to see you. Nobody better to break this down for us. Obviously, we have seen the string of deadly crashes going back to this summer when that illegal immigrant truck driver in Florida did a U-turn, killing three, in a string of cases that included more recently a Chinese illegal immigrant that had a CDL and an Indian immigrant that had a CDL. And in this case, one individual was killed in both of those. But the Chinese national and the Indian national had crossed the border illegally and been released under the Biden administration in 2023 out west in Arizona and California. Now we see this lawsuit. Do these immigrant truck drivers have a case?
Well, it's too early to tell, Griff, but I wouldn't put my money on them. Here's really the issue. They're suing California, and they're saying California made clerical errors. They're not saying at this point that there's a problem with the federal government, as I understand it. And here's how this whole thing started. There's a ton of federal transportation money going to the states. And the Trump administration came in and said, guess what? You have a lot of people driving with commercial licenses who shouldn't be, illegal aliens or people who are legally here but don't have the proper status to be driving. And if you don't fix it, you're not going to get any transportation money. And so you have a guy like Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, who is no fan of Trump, who canceled over 20,000 commercial licenses because they don't want to lose that federal money. We're talking about 73 million for the state of New York, 73 million alone. So here are the two main issues here. You've got people who are driving, illegal aliens or people with not completely legal status who are here, who have commercial licenses issued by the states, and those licenses haven't expired yet, but their status as legal non-citizens here has expired. And the Trump administration has said that's going to stop. And at first, Gavin Newsom was very defiant about it. And then he canceled 20 licenses, or he announced they're going to be canceled, I think, on January the 5th. And your second issue, as you pointed out, is people who are here, whether they're legal or not, they're of immigrant status and they're driving trucks and they are not proficient in English, which of course can cause all kinds of accidents. So those are the economic factors, the financial factors that are driving a state like California, which is certainly not Trump friendly on immigration policy, to say we better do something or we're going to lose a lot of money. That's kind of the backdrop for what's happening here.
Well, and you know, Sol, and I'm not a lawyer, you are, but I wonder too, when I hear about this case, I wonder, so do the families of the victims who were killed by illegal immigrant truck drivers that crossed the border illegally were released, then given work authorization, then given commercial driver's licenses for which they were not qualified to operate, do the families have a civil case to bring against the previous Biden administration for enabling this?
Well, they'll have to get past issues of qualified immunity if they're going against individual actors. But I certainly think they do have a potential case. I'm not an expert in that area of law. I don't see why they wouldn't. But again, I think it's very interesting that this lawsuit says so far, hey, there's just been a lot of clerical errors. We don't have any problem with you saying that people who aren't in the country legally shouldn't have commercial licenses. We're just saying you made errors, and that's fine. They can make that claim. If they can make that claim, that's fine. If somebody is going to get canceled who should be driving, fair enough. I just think the larger issue is that the Trump administration has, as they have in so many things, has finally decided to come in and say, this is going to stop. It's really that simple.
It's such a great point. It's the clerical argument they're making. They're okay with the fact that you have 80,000 ton trucks being operated by highly dangerous situations. At the end of the day, Sol, do you believe that this is an issue that the Trump administration should continue to lean into?
Well, I think they're going to lean into it, and I think for the most part, they're going to win. Here's what's also going on. I think I said there are many different strands in this fight. The Trump administration is also coming in and trying to change federal regulations that govern trucking in order to say, hey, if you come in and even if you have temporary asylum status and you're here legally because you have temporary asylum status, you still should not be able to have a commercial driver's license. Trump administration is coming in trying to change the federal rules to accomplish that. And right now that's been halted temporarily by a federal judge. So that's really the key, to come in and use the power over federal regulations to do something about this.
So Weisenberg, always great insight. Have a great weekend, my friend.
You too. Thanks for having me.
All right.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.